early part of the interview. But I have a question for both of you to start with, and that is, just jumping right in, it isn't every day that trans or non-binary people get to bring our identity to work to start a conversation. So, you both have really long CVs in the performance world, and they include theater that's maybe a little bit more mainstream. So, why is it the time now for Man in the Moon? And what do you hope that this conversation creates for your audiences? And you can each answer if you like.
Yeah. Do you want to start, Sienna?
What I hope people get from the show is like a bridge, like a gap, like kind of like a bridge for that gap of people who are going through this experience and the people on the other side of that who are interacting with us who are going through this experience, I guess. Like something that kind of helps meet people in the middle.
Mm,
That
that's
makes
interesting.
sense.
Yeah, it does. How about you, Haley? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, part of my voice, or what I hope my voice will continue to be as a director, is showing queerness and gender expression as existent and natural. I think a lot of times there's theater about the trauma of the queer experience. And what I love so much about Man and Moon is that it's not about, it does have trauma involved in the show, but it's not necessarily about the trauma. It just is people being, and they just are. And there's a lot of parallels to that with Luna's admiration of space and kind of using that as her escape. And Aaron has his own escapes as well. So, what I hope the audience takes is something Sienna said in a previous interview of I hope that people come that have not had, like, people like our parents who haven't had a lot of experiences with queer people, especially non-binary and trans folk,
Mhm.
and how it can just be as it is, and kind of just planting a seed rather than, um just plant, like, using it as a seed for them to see something that's different from the norms that they grew up with, is very important to me.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you have something to add, Sienna?
Just piggybacking off of that, I think part of what helps about this show in particular is seeing it through the eyes of a kid, seeing
Mhm.
it through the eyes of Luna, helps, I think, maybe in some ways to make it a little more digestible.
Yeah. Well, that's good
Definitely.
because that was my next question actually, and it was for you, Sienna. So you guys are gonna do this the whole time. I know you're gonna jump on the next question before I get it. Sienna, you include a 12-year-old character in the play, and I was gonna ask about the significance of including youth in this story, and is youth part of your intended audience?
Definitely, I would say, I think that something that this is kind of very random, but I watched a documentary on Nickelodeon, like back in the summer, and what I appreciated about what I learned from that is that something that the people that were involved with Nickelodeon like during like the 90s, like something they really appreciated was like treating kids like their people rather than like treating them like their children, sort of like they have their own, they're capable of a lot more than we give them credit for, I think.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I at least like as a kid, that's kind of like I grew up, I was an only child, and so like I spent a lot of time with adults, and like I think like it's true, like there are a lot of things that kids are able to grasp, like even though we don't give them credit for that. So I think with Luna being at like that age in particular, like this time right before she starts to enter adult like themes and identities and stuff like that, it's like this last moment of that kid time, but like she's still able to, she's still entering that time, I guess there's some significance to that time in her life.
Yeah, it's also a transitional phase
Mhm.
of life. Yeah, I get that. That's cool. So, another question for you, Sienna. The hospital is the setting of the play, and that's a transitioning place. It's a man in transition, um, but you're also addressing breast cancer, and it's in an oncology unit. Oh, now I have background noises. Sorry.
That's
Can
okay.
can you tell us how you decided to approach the play from this setting and why?
Yeah. So kind of this takes us back to like why the play happened at all, I would say. This started as a one act collaboration between myself, and a director that I worked with in college whose mother had breast cancer. And their mother basically had breast cancer throughout the entirety of their childhood. And so while it was interesting because like while I've had experiences with cancer, it was a very different perspective. We had like very different feelings about it. Like something for me, it was something that was really scary and something that like I had a hard time talking about and opening up about because it was something that was too big for me. And for my friend Kat, for them, it was more like this is something that's been a part of my life for so long and I'm used to it in some respects. And that was so weird for me. And I was like, how are you comfortable with it? Like, it's so, like, that's so terrifying to me.
Mm.
So, this play is kind of about that marriage, I think, between those two different perspectives.
Gotcha.
So when they asked me to write this piece, that's kind of what we ended up coming to, was like this, to like learning how to cope with some things that are too difficult to cope with, things that
Mhm.
are still too difficult.
That makes perfect sense. I get that. And also, I mean, I'm not sure how it will play out in the play, but there is like this connection of breast cancer, and a lot of times people who transition to male do get a breast or top surgery, right?
Mhm.
So there's that. Do you make any connections in the play like that, or is it just left up to people to figure out that?
I think the script, it's had many iterations, and I did touch upon it a little bit more in different timelines, but
Mm,
it's a little more left to your where you want to go with
mhm.
it, I think. And I don't know, how do you feel, Hayley? We
Yeah, I think it's adaptable for different people who play Aaron. It's traditionally written as someone who is newly out as trans,
Mhm.
so pre-surgery,
Okay.
and really just starting a social transition as well.
Okay, gotcha.
But so it's implied through visually and in the text, though it is not explicitly stated, which is something I love so much about Siena's work, is that the dialogue, the way the dialogue lives and breathes in their bodies is so natural and so hyper realistic. Where, if any more was said, it'd be blowing our hair back,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
the way they are able to kind of craft the dialogue between the two, you go, oh, how this is just like a normal conversation that anyone would have, which is
Yeah,
something I so much about getting to direct it.
that's awesome. Thank you, Haley. Well, Haley, this is a question for you. Tell us about some of the playful or joyful elements that you bring to the story with your staging and direction. And kind of piggybacking off that question, what does the youth character Luna's love of outer space symbolize to you in the show?
I love those questions.
Thank you.
I might have to ask again for the second one, but the first one, through staging and how does it reflect the joy? That's something, as a director, I really try and steer away from melodrama and doom and gloom, right? And so though this play really gets you at the end and throughout little moments, there's these piercing moments that jabby right here. The play is funny, and I like to tell people, we're not playing a drama, we're playing a comedy. They're in the staged reading, you have the or stage reading, the first reading we had, you don't expect, I didn't expect how many people would be laughing and cracking up. And then at the end, just tears fall. And that's how I think theater should be. So the ways I've kind of highlighted that into the staging is really leaning in, especially in transitions, to kind of a non-realistic world through the eyes of the child. So
Mm,
rather than doing, projections of a NASA image, creating the feeling of space as it would feel to a young kid. How did you think of space? For me,
mhm.
it could very well, the stars could have been fish up there swimming, and I wouldn't have known as a kid, because you look up and it's just this grand thing that is so distant from you, you know? And so I really wanted to work with that through physical storytelling. And like you do with Physical Theater Fest, you know, how can we tell a story in a non-realistic way that isn't diluting the script at all, but is aiding it and driving it forward.
Mm.
So within the internal scenes, it is hyper realism. I I think eye contact, certain looks as if you were watching it on film can
Mm.
tell a story all in one. And just that timing and the energy and rhythm the actors have is something we've really worked at creating, because there are a lot of ellipses in the play. So what does that do? What are we going to do on stage to honor that? And then, like I said, in the transitions, you know, Luna's imagination takes us to this space world. And you mentioned, you know, what does that symbolize for you? To me, it symbolizes wonder and possibility as well as escape. So as a double-edged sword, you know,
Mhm.
throughout the course of the play, you see Luna age just a few months, but her relationship with Aaron has caused her to really ground herself in reality. And so what was just wonder and excitement kind of sort of becomes an escape for her,
Mhm.
as she grapples with so many adversities in her life.
Wow, thank you. Um, on a related note, I noticed that there's mention of radical inclusivity as being part of your philosophy, Haley. How does that play into the themes and the action involved in Man in the Moon?
Yes, so I think the cornerstone of working in an on a play that promotes inclusivity, and you know, in order to have a play that pushes boundaries in the theater, the cornerstone of that is ensemble. And so the integrity of the ensemble and making sure that we have people who represent what this story is about was number one for me. So we have a cast full of many different gender identities, many different queer identities, and all who are so talented, who are able to really just take this work. I'm interested in not, you know, the pyramid scheme of directing, with bureaucracy and, you know, the totem pole, but really making that a circle. And so having, you know, all parts, playwright, designers, actors, even understudies, everyone involved in how do we create this piece. And so that is something that I've really taken through warm-ups, through intimacy coaching, through table work, and then, you know, transferring that onto the stage. So they're not just playing roles, but they're really filtering themselves through the given circumstances of the show.
That's amazing. Thank you. That's a great answer. Sienna, last question, by the way, everybody. Although it's a doozy, so hang on. So, Man in the Moon is a rolling world premiere, which I kind of think I understand means that other populations around the US will get the opportunity to produce and see the play, right? So, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes.
will it be touring areas of the country that are considered less LGBTQIA plus friendly? And how important is it to you for an art to challenge an increasingly rigid like worldview around marginalized populations?
Great questions. And I may need to come back to part two, but part one, it's the first place it stopped was in Ogden, Utah. So while Ogden is a rather queer friendly like city, obviously Utah has a lot of stigma there in terms of the queer community and a lot of laws still that aren't super inclusive. So
Mm.
it was really cool to see, like, I believe, I don't know exactly what level of government official person came, but someone came to the show and just had like a lot to say about it because something
Mm.
had just not passed and it was really hard for them. So it was a wonderful opportunity just to know that like this is something that I think helps open people's minds in some direction, even if it's not reaching a huge audience. It's reaching some people in an area that don't usually get their representation out there. So it's also going to be in Eugene, Oregon. So I believe Oregon's a little queer friendly, I believe, to my understanding. I've actually never been.
Eugene is definitely. Yeah, Eugene is, but like I don't know if all of Oregon is, so yeah.
Yeah, so it'll just be good to see what reach that has. I know that we're collaborating. I mean, Hayley has done amazing things to collaborate with I think Howard Brown and another trans organization. And also in Eugene, we're going to be, I think we're doing some sort of a collaboration with Transponder, which is another trans organization based in Eugene. So I'm excited for that. And it's really important for me to continue to see, I'd like for again, just the idea of the gap to be closed, for people to just kind of, it not to feel like a this or that. Because there's a lot of division, I feel like I notice in life, especially even within my own family. And so it's kind of like, my hope would be if like I can get some of my family members who maybe don't understand me or don't understand what I'm about, or the communities that I'm a part of, what they're about, to kind of see it through just a different lens. That's the most I can hope for.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most, but that's something I can hope for.
That's a good start, I think. It's a really good start.
Yeah.
Okay. I really, really appreciate talking to you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.